The preceding was sponsored by Pleasantville.
From the creator of Big and Dave.
Honey, I'm home.
Comes the film Roger Ebert calls one of this year's sure Oscar contenders.
It'll go away.
I don't want it to go away.
Time magazine says it's an epic-sized entertainment that's smart fun.
You can't stop something that's inside you.
Pleasantville is a delight. Film itself has been reborn. Pleasantville, rated PG-13. Now playing.
Next on AMC, follow the saga of Bob Harris and Jim Katz as they preserve and restore a beloved Oscar-winning musical in The Making of My Fair Lady. Next.
Hi, I'm Tim Burton. You may know me from directing movies like Beetlejuice, Batman, and Edward Scissorhands. So I couldn't pass up the chance to host AMC's Monster Fest.
Thanks, Tim. Sure sounds like a creepy week. Join Tim Burton at America's most famous haunted houses for a whole week of classic monster movies.
Run a switch!
Shock around the clock. Monster Fest is here. All this week at 10 Eastern, only on AMC.
I'll be seeing you real soon.
AMC presents a classic moment on Hollywood Homes. Brought to you by Hunter Douglas Window Fashions, changing the world one window at a time.
If the sun comes up and goes down by itself, why shouldn't a shade? Introducing Duet with Power Rise, the shade that goes up and down at the touch of a button. Now the beauty of Duet has been raised to an even higher level with the addition of Power Rise, creating the world's first affordable battery-powered honeycomb shade. Duet with Power Rise. It moves, you don't. For a free brochure, call 1-800-HUNTER-D.
Beverly Hills is a unique community lined with exclusive shops and expensive stores. The town that many movie stars call home. But Tinseltown's first favorite community sprouted up 10 years earlier. Nestled in the foothills above Hollywood is the little gem of Whitley Heights. Completely unknown even to some native residents of Los Angeles, this quaint little Mediterranean paradise of the early 1920s was actually the first movie colony. Created by H.J. Whitley to resemble the villas of Italy and France, and designed to provide each home with an unobstructed view, the birth of Whitley Heights coincided with the birth of a new industry, filmmaking. Whitley Heights quickly became home to silent film stars such as Barbara Lamar, Francis X. Bushman, Marie Dressler, and Rudolph Valentino and his wife, Natasha Rambova. Later, Ronald Colman, Rosalind Russell, and Betty Davis took up residence there. And it's no coincidence that many of the Whitley interiors resemble famous movie sets of the time. Some of the individual architects and designers held part-time jobs just down the road in Hollywood. In the 1940s, construction of the Hollywood Freeway required the leveling of 40 homes in the community, including the beloved Valentino Villa. Although the development remains separated from itself today, it still offers a wonderful reminder of what yesterday was like when everything in Hollywood was new.
Break the brass! Break the brass! Desk set! Desk set!
Now you do have a say in your classic movie viewing with AMC's Viewers Pick, where the fans pick the films. Visit the AMC website at www.amctv.com and vote for your favorite classic movies. Then tune in Sunday nights at 8 to see who won on AMC's Viewers Pick. When you vote, you'll be zapped into the AMC Pleasantville sweepstakes, where you'll automatically be entered to win a pleasant Hawaiian holiday for two to Maui.
We're supposed to be in school.
We're supposed to be in color?
New Line Cinema invites you to visit the perfect town of Pleasantville and discover its true colors.
Something is happening to our town.
Enter the AMC Pleasantville sweepstakes at www.amctv.com and experience the magic of Pleasantville in theaters everywhere October 23rd.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid!
AMC's Viewers Pick, where your vote counts.
1930s movie siren Thelma Todd still walks these stairs, even though she died over 50 years ago. It's just one of the Hollywood ghost stories, an AMC original production hosted by William Shatner. World Screamier, Friday, October 30th at 9 Eastern.
Presenting the brightest shining star of the Old West, America's first and favorite singing cowboy, Gene Autry.
I'm back in the saddle again.
American Movie Classics is proud to present a special collector's edition of Gene Autry's finest uncut full-length motion pictures, including the classics Down Mexico Way, Strawberry Roan, and South of the Border. 3 films that establish Gene Autry as America's favorite riding, roping, and singing movie star. Order this special collection now for only $54.95 by calling 1-800-AMC-3511. And you'll also receive AMC's exclusive 1-hour original production, Gene Autry Melody of the West. Hosted by Johnny Cash, this fascinating documentary provides an intimate look at the life and work of the legendary star. The Gene Autry video collection, a great gift idea, now available by special offer exclusively to AMC viewers and their families for only $54.95 plus shipping and handling. Call now and have your Visa or MasterCard ready.
Next on AMC, follow the saga of Bob Harris and Jim Katz as they preserve and restore a beloved Oscar-winning musical in The Making of My Fair Lady. Next.
Never seen them before. The stars, the players, the movies, all just seconds away. Behind the screen. Hello everyone, I'm Nick Clooney and I want to welcome you to AMC Behind the Screen, the insider's guide to the films and stars of American movie classics. We've got an interesting lineup for you tonight. You're going to meet the man who gave Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, and many others a break, all while managing to make over 100 classic B movies. And in honor of Halloween, a tour of haunted Hollywood. And some fascinating behind-the-scenes stories about the making of Orson Welles' Touch of Evil. But let's begin with a look at the making of one of the most beloved musicals of all time, My Fair Lady. Final product's a wonderful classic. But as you're about to learn in our backstory, the production was haunted by controversy.
I could have danced all night.
Eliza Doolittle, the headstrong flower girl of My Fair Lady, could have been the role of a lifetime for Audrey Hepburn. But the controversy surrounding her casting and later her singing in this 1964 film musical turned it into one of the most difficult experiences of her professional career. When studio chief Jack L. Warner paid a record $5.5 million for the screen rights to this 1956 Broadway show, he wanted bankable stars to play Eliza and Professor Henry Higgins.
The role was offered to Cary Grant. And he said to Jack Warner, if Rex Harrison, who played Professor Henry Higgins on Broadway, does not get this role, I will never work again with you and never hear of any kind of roles offered to me.
Julie Andrews, Broadway's Eliza, lobbied for the screen role, but she couldn't compete with the star power of Hepburn, Jack Warner's first choice.
To be honest, I didn't hold out that much hope that I was going to get the role. I wished for it and wanted it, but I don't think I thought I would get it. So it wasn't as desperately awful a disappointment as people think that it might have been.
Warner paid Hepburn a record $1 million because he believed her performance alone would ensure this musical's success. The only catch? Hepburn didn't sing.
I remember at the time people just saying, how can it be that an actress is being... I mean, okay, I mean, we all know that Audrey Hepburn can act wonderfully, but how could you have a dubbed actress in the role?
Hepburn was determined to show up her critics. She spent 5 to 6 hours in voice lessons daily and pre-recorded her musical tracks under the guidance of conductor Andre Previn. Both he and director George Cukor led her to believe her voice would be used, but professional dubber to the stars, Marnie Nixon, had a different understanding.
I was not supposed to let anybody know that I was going to be doing the dubbing for Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady. I think that was in my contract.
Lots of chocolate for me to eat.
She actually took the picture, filmed the picture to her own track. singing the song. And then they threw out that track, which didn't make her very happy.
Lots of chocolate for me to eat.
She walked off the set, evidently, just made a huff and walked out. Came back to the studio the next day, apologizing to everybody for her wicked behavior.
Although Hepburn seemed to accept the decision, her disappointment and embarrassment over this turn of events was apparent.
I must say I take my hat off to the marvelous people in Hollywood who twiddle all the knobs and who can make one voice out of two.
Well, I guessed that it must be your voice and just you wait Henry Higgins.
Yeah, there was a lot of it.
And I thought maybe the higher soprano was when you got a little help.
That's right.
My Fair Lady went on to garner all the major Oscar nominations except Best Actress. Although Hepburn never got over this anguishing experience, audiences around the world embraced her performance. My Fair Lady became an instant hit, and to this day, Hepburn is lauded for her radiance in an American movie classic.
My Fair Lady airs tonight on AMC immediately after Behind the Screen at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Again at 2:30 a.m. Eastern, 11:30 p.m. Pacific. For more behind-the-scene details, catch the AMC original documentary, The Making of My Fair Lady, at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Well, if you think Audrey Hepburn had trouble, just imagine finding out that your favorite uncle was a serial killer. That's exactly what happened to Teresa Wright's character in Alfred Hitchcock's classic Shadow of a Doubt. Miss Wright and Joseph Cotton star in this suspense drama taking place in small-town America. Tonight's freeze frame reveals other little-known details about the cast of this American movie classic.
I don't see a pencil, so maybe she better call you back. I'm trying to keep my mind free of things that don't matter.
Eat and sleep, and that's about all. You don't even have any real conversations. You just talk.
And work. The best way to commit a murder...
I know. Hit him on the head with a blunt instrument.
There.
It's none of your business.
Incidentally, this is Miss Wright's 80th birthday. For all the great film moments she has given us, let me offer sincere thanks and happy birthday from film lovers everywhere. You can see Miss Wright in Alfred Hitchcock's classic Shadow of a Doubt, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, here on AMC. Alfred Hitchcock was, of course, a master of suspense, and so was Orson Welles. Difference was that we are told working on an Orson Welles movie was often as bizarre as the picture itself. Charlton Heston and Janet Leigh provide an exclusive first-hand account. Wait till you hear this. This is what went on behind the scenes of Mr. Welles's cult classic movie, Touch of Evil.
The 1958 noir classic, Touch of Evil, tells the story of murder and corruption in a Mexican border town. Charlton Heston stars as an idealistic Mexican law enforcement official, and Janet Leigh plays his wife, Susan Vargas. Orson Welles, who plays the jaded police captain, Hank Quinlan, was back in Hollywood after 10 years of self-imposed European exile. Once considered the golden boy of Hollywood, after directing and starring in Citizen Kane, Welles had fallen out of favor with the studios because of his uncontrollable production habits. He was known to be chronically over budget and off schedule. The fact is, he was lucky to even have a starring role in this B feature.
Well, Pete, let's get back to civilization.
His luck continued to improve. When Universal Pictures needed to hire a director for Touch of Evil, Heston had a daring suggestion.
They said, well, we haven't set the director yet, but Orson Welles has agreed to do the heavy in it. I said, why don't you have him direct? He's a pretty good director. And you would have thought I'd suggested my mother direct.
Universal reluctantly assigned Welles to direct Touch of Evil. With less than a month to prepare, he rewrote the entire script and set out to prove himself to the studio, while managing to provoke them at the same time.
Orson did not turn a camera on the first day of shooting. Did not turn a camera until about 2 in the afternoon. That makes studios very nervous. They were standing around in corners, giving each other uneasy little looks. Then he started doing takes, and finally, about 6 o'clock, he said, okay, print the last one. That's a wrap for the day and a wrap on this scene. We're 3 days ahead of schedule.
To his credit, Wells was able to shoot 10% of the script in the first 2 days. But signing on to an Orson Welles movie was like checking into an alternate universe of movie making. Daily schedules changed without notice. Locations were seized on impulse. And only the volatile genius behind Citizen Kane held the keys to the enigmatic formula.
There was always a great deal of excitement. Just the fact of Wells, he has this aura of energy and exciting, and so he carries it with him, and it permeates to everyone on the set. He'd always kind of keep us on the alert, because all of a sudden Joseph Cotton would be doing a cameo, or Zsa Zsa would do a cameo, and so each night it was like, who's going to be there tonight?
At the time, filmmaking was mostly a backlot operation, but Wells had other ideas. When he needed a Mexican border town as a backdrop, he set up shop in a rarely visited area of Los Angeles.
Well, we shot it right in Venice, California, before Venice was redone and made so beautiful. But because at that time it was pretty seedy and pretty scary. The scene in the balcony, with all the people, and you know, he's going by in the car and she's on the balcony screaming for help. Well, that was that little balcony was outside of a room in this hotel, and there was a derelict on the bed in there who was, you know, out drunk, and so I had to go through the room to get to the balcony each time. That was scary.
Wells was wildly unpredictable. By placing his actors in precarious positions, he was able to coax visceral, almost desperate performances.
What pops out at me was that the first day when I went to the motel, and I was exposed to Dennis Weaver's interpretation of the motel keeper.
There ain't no day, man. Supposed to be here at 6 o'clock this morning. Now they phone me and they tell me he ain't coming at all. They're sending a new man.
I understand. I was told that like Dennis had this idea of how to play him, and went to Orson, and Orson said, great, but they never told me. So the first day when I go out and we're doing the scene, and he does his you know, we're playing the scene, rehearsing, I mean, I flipped.
Surreal performances aside, it was Wells's opening scene that raised the bar on modern filmmaking. He directed one long, unedited shot that lasted an incredible 3 minutes and 20 seconds. To this day, film scholars marvel at the camera work. But for the actors and crew of Touch of Evil, it was just another night of shooting in Orson Welles's laboratory.
We were shooting on it all night, largely because the customs inspector kept blowing his lines. Orson said, look, if you forget the lines, just move your mouth. But he said, please don't say, oh, Mr. Wells, I'm sorry. And he didn't say, oh, Mr. Wells, I'm sorry. He did forget the line again, but and it's a classic shot.
Despite Wells's resourceful approach to a mediocre story, Universal neither appreciated nor understood his final cut. They hired a second director to reshoot scenes, and while Wells was out of town, they re-edited the picture and banned him from the lot completely. As a result, the final print did not reflect Wells's true vision. He was permitted to attend only one screening and was heartbroken by what he saw. After the release, at age 43, Wells returned to Europe and never made another Hollywood feature. Thus, a chapter in history that had opened in 1941 with perhaps the biggest bang in cinema, Citizen Kane, ended nearly 20 years later as Marlene Dietrich whispered the final word in Touch of Evil. It was a long way from Rosebud.
Adios.
Adios.
You know, Orson Welles was so disenchanted with the studio's version of Touch of Evil that he fired off a 58-page memo, and it was filled with corrections to the head of Universal Studios. That memo was recently uncovered, and a team of experts recut the film to reflect Mr. Welles's original vision. That version can be seen at select theaters today. Or you can see the original version here on AMC, Tuesday, 2:05 p.m. Eastern, 11:05 Pacific, and again, 12:30 a.m. Eastern, 9:30 p.m. Pacific. Still to come on AMC Behind the Screen, The King of Bees and Hollywood Ghost Stories.
Which director kicked off his film career with a spooky animated short called Vincent? We'll unearth the answer in a moment.
Each week, AMC gives you a documentary and a movie on the series that connects fact to fiction, truth to legend, real to real, Hollywood real to real.
Do not adjust your television. It's a special Monster Fest edition of Hollywood real to real.
First, Jack Palance looks at the impact of monsters on pop culture.
Monster Mania.
Then, William Castle brings you not one, not two, but 13 ghosts. Watch a special Monster Fest edition of Hollywood Real to Real. Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, only on AMC.
Director Tim Burton of Batman, Edward Scissorhands, and Ed Wood fame created Vincent, his homage to Vincent Price, when he was only 22 years old.
As all moviegoers know, Hollywood has made an entire industry out of Halloween. Each year, movies celebrate the dark side of life with tales of terror. But nothing can compare to the real-life legends that haunt the Hollywood hills. Hollywood Ghost Stories is an AMC original documentary about the paranormal side of Tinseltown. Here's a preview of the spooky places we found in the City of Angels. You know Hollywood is overflowing with stars, but what about supernatural spirits? AMC's original documentary, Hollywood Ghost Stories, exposes some creepy tales that might make you rethink your next trip to Tinseltown.
For the next hour, we're going to take you on an eerie ride through Hollywood's most famous haunts and the bizarre events that have involved some of Hollywood's biggest stars.
William Shatner captains this otherworldly tour through the spookiest locales in Hollywood, like the haunted home of Jean Harlow.
Something's missing, and I guess it always has been with this place. Gives me the willies.
Flip Wilson.
My daughters came to me and said, Dad, there's something strange about this house.
Elka Summer.
If somebody would tell me the story of what happened to me, I would not believe it.
Some say the spot where Hollywood's swankiest supper club once stood seems to have become a hangout for ghosts.
I'm certain it was Errol Flynn, standing right across the room.
And the oldest working back lot in Hollywood still has ghosts on the payroll.
Oh man, my skin's crawling.
The stories become much more grim when they touch on objects such as the car in which actor James Dean caused the death of another person as well as his own.
There are no less than 12 incidents documented in which that car either hurt someone, turned over, killed somebody.
And superstition rakes even more contemporary open wounds, such as a script which has supposedly jinxed actors from John Candy to Chris Farley.
It is spooky. It's very strange.
There are many who believe the City of Angels has more than its share of dark angels. Don't miss the premiere of Hollywood Ghost Stories, Friday, October 30th, right here on AMC. Actually, AMC is celebrating the dark side of classic films all week long with Monster Fest. Tim Burton, who is no stranger to the weird world of horror movies, introduces our selection of scary movies all week long. And in honor of Monster Fest, we have prepared a classic countdown in the spirit of the season.
We begin our countdown of classic screams with the one from Die Monster Die. This one earns the 5th place spot for its sheer out-of-the-blue terror. She's just a nice girl, fixing her hair, looking to open a window for some fresh air, when all of a sudden... Not bad, huh? And it's complete with a run into the arms of the love interest.
What's wrong?
Our countdown continues with a peach of a scream from a little girl from that classic movie, Them, where army men fight big ants. She's about to come out of shock and remember her experience with the large creatures. Not only is it a good scream, but she keeps on yelling the title of the movie, which earns her extra points and 4th place in our classic countdown. Our 3rd place winner comes from the sublime Dracula, Prince of Darkness. This one earns its place in the countdown for 2 reasons. 1, the acting prowess demonstrated in the subtle build-up to the scream. And 2, what frightened her was just the silhouette of a normal guy entering a room. Of course, he is the butler of Dracula.
Sorry if I startled the ladies, sir.
Coming in at number 2, coming from the curse of the demon, we've chosen a man this time. Although no one gives a nice shrill scream like a female, we thought this guy does a fine job given his natural limitations. Here goes. See, male scream, not so impressive, right? And finally, our number 1 classic scream, coming from the extremely classic Return of the Vampire, proving once and for all that before the Beatles and before Elvis, it was vampires that made the young girls scream. So that's it. Classic screams from classic films on our classic countdown.
Roger Corman, the man responsible for some of the movies airing during our Monster Fest week of programming, is a man of widely varied distinctions. He's been called the King of Bees. He's also been credited with bringing up a whole generation of movie makers, from Francis Ford Coppola to James Cameron, with movies like X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, and a book called How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood and Never Lost a Dime. We felt he'd be a great subject for a behind-the-screen close-up.
I've always been an independent filmmaker as opposed to being a studio filmmaker. Maybe I myself want to be a little bit outside of the establishment, although somebody once referred to me as, I think, Hollywood's oldest established rebel.
Roger Corman, the legendary master of the macabre, may not act like much of a rebel now. In fact, within the walls of his thriving film production company, Concord New Horizons, he might even be mistaken for just a regular Hollywood type.
That. Okay. And then tighten that as well also.
But just a glance at Roger Corman's expansive filmography dating back to the early 1950s reveals a more, shall we say, unconventional side to the man. Titles like The Undead, Bloody Mama, X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes. Not the stuff of a typical Hollywood filmmaker.
I think I'd always been interested in the fantastic, science fiction, horror, fantasy. Anything that took us beyond reality. Maybe as a teenager, I wasn't that delighted with reality.
Mr. Corman earned his reputation directing and producing trend-setting, low-budget films at an astounding rate, up to 9 each year. Mr. Corman's employer, American International Pictures, was the most influential independent production company of the 1960s, owing most of its success to his productivity and genius.
When you think of Roger Corman, you think of the 60s, you think of movies like The Wild Angels, Bruce Dern on that motorcycle. You also think of AIP, American International Pictures. Better than a B studio, but it wasn't quite in the league of the big studios. But Roger Corman has a legacy of a lot of interesting films from that time.
For from this night onward, you shall bear my curse.
Among Mr. Corman's most notable works for AIP were a series of stylish Gothic chillers based on the stories of Edgar Allan Poe.
I think Edgar Allan Poe is one of the most significant, one of the most important American writers. Not only was he a great artist, but I think he was at the forefront of scientific or advanced thinking.
Then you've come home at last.
At last. Classics like Tales of Terror and The Haunted Palace struck box office gold and won critical acclaim.
The critics went a little bit overboard in praising all of the Poe pictures. I was a little startled. I was just a guy making low-budget films, and suddenly here, and particularly in France, I was getting these great reviews.
Mr. Corman may have been surprised by his success, but it was no fluke. He took great pains to inject each of his films with imagination. Sequences like this one in the Haunted Palace did not simply further the plot, they created a state of mind.
I conceived of the idea of the long corridor and the person walking down the corridor approaching something that is both frightening and wonderful. And he's saying, I must go down this corridor. And at the same time, something within him is saying, don't go down that corridor. It may not be as great as you think it is. And I think that is the essence of at least one aspect of horror.
One of the finest examples of Mr. Corman's inventive approach to low-budget filmmaking was in X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes. He may not have had the money for whiz-bang effects, but he had the vision.
X was a very good and unique idea, I think. The idea that a person is able to see through things and gradually sees through more and more and more. I remember once there was a building being constructed on Sunset Boulevard, and I photographed it when it was just a framework. And then a month or two later, when it was more complete, I photographed it again, and then I reversed the cutting, so first he sees the building, then he sees partially into the building, then he can see all the way into the core.
If thine eye offends thee, pluck it out!
Apart from making dozens of enormously innovative and entertaining films like X, Corman also mentored some of the most prominent filmmakers in Hollywood today.
Among the earlier ones were Francis Coppola, Peter Bogdanovich, then later Marty Scorsese, Jonathan Demme. I'm very proud of the a number of women who've started with me and have gone on. Gail Ann Hurd is a very prominent producer.
The wonderful thing in working for Roger Corman is that he allowed you to be not only administrative but creative. And it was a perfect melding of making sure that the film was on schedule and on budget, but at the same time being very, very involved in the development of screenplays, casting, post-production, and those are all skills I learned working for Roger.
Those who have worked with Roger Corman credit him as a major force in their careers. His style, efficiency, and imagination have not only influenced their work, but left an indelible mark on modern American cinema. But Hollywood's oldest established rebel sees himself in a more modest light.
I simply try to do the best I can. I try to work as a craftsman, and if some of it rises above the level of craftsmanship and might touch a moment of art, that's fine. If it doesn't, I still did the best I could, and I worked as a craftsman.
You can see 3 of Mr. Corman's classics here on Halloween. The Haunted Palace airs at 9:45 a.m. Eastern, 6:45 a.m. Pacific. Tales of Terror airs at 6:15 p.m. Eastern, 3:15 Pacific. And X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, airs at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. We'll be right back.
Which funny man saw only 5 minutes of Tim Burton's 23-minute film Frankenweenie and instantly knew he was the director to bring his movie to life? The answer's on the way.
You're getting all dressed up to go out and buy tickets. Why?
Sure. I'm meeting somebody. Just anybody handy, as long as he's a man.
There's romance, mystery,
Be at the place as soon as it opens.
the date, and murder at a honeymoon haven by the falls.
He's alive. He was standing right here looking at me.
Marilyn Monroe, Joseph Cotton, and Jean Peters star in Niagara.
Wednesday on AMC's Explore America.
Just a sliver of Tim Burton's Frankenweenie inspired Pee Wee Herman to track down and hire the young director for his first feature film, Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
And that's about it for this edition of AMC Behind the Screen. We would like to very much thank Charlton Heston, Janet Leigh, and Roger Corman for all their wonderful stories. We're going to leave you now with a music video cut from the upcoming week of Monster Fest movies. I'm Nick Clooney. Thanks very much for watching, and so long, everyone.
You may know me from directing movies like Beetlejuice, Batman, and Edward Scissorhands. So I couldn't pass up the chance to host AMC's Monster Fest.
Thanks, Tim. Sure sounds like a creepy week. Join Tim Burton at America's most famous haunted houses for a whole week of classic monster movies.
Brother Switch!
Shock around the clock. Monster Fest is here. Every night this week and all weekend, only on AMC.
I'll be seeing you real soon.
Next on AMC, William Holden stars with Audrey Hepburn in the romantic comedy Paris When It Sizzles. Next on AMC.
Break the breath! Break the breath! Desk set! Desk set!
Now you do have a say in your classic movie viewing with AMC's Viewer's Pick, where the fans pick the films. Visit the AMC website at www.amctv.com and vote for your favorite classic movies. Then tune in Sunday nights at 8 to see who won on AMC's Viewer's Pick. When you vote, you'll be zapped into the AMC Pleasantville sweepstakes, where you'll automatically be entered to win a pleasant Hawaiian holiday for two to Maui.
We're supposed to be in school.
We're supposed to be in color?
New Line Cinema invites you to visit the perfect town of Pleasantville and discover its true colors.